All right. We got a very disturbing and really messed up story here. You're going not to believe it. You're like, what? Oh, yeah. And this is not the first time I did a story about someone getting buried alive. It was last week I did a story about a husband try to stab his wife and bury her in the woods alive. Well, she escaped. Check it out. So it's called Man Buries Young Daughter Alive in Backyard. Yeah, man buries 6-year-old daughter alive in backyard. Let's get to it.
We are the first to talk about this nationally, I believe. A man buries his daughter, 6 years of age, alive, leaves her overnight. Let's put up his picture full mass.
Right here.
It is a disturbing and extreme story.
John Yes, Kraft, it is. Very disturbing.
Kraft of Waynesburg.
John Kraft
was jailed after police interviewed the girl and her siblings, who said their father buried the girl alive in a hole in their yard overnight.
Wow.
That left her smelling like sewage, according to the local news station KDKA-TV. Social workers in Greene County found severe bruising on her face and body last month, according to police, who documented old and new bruises on her body. The girl told officers that Kraft frequently beat her with a belt and his arm, which has a metal rod surgically implanted in it. And he allegedly choked his daughter until she blacked out. Kraft has been charged with multiple counts of aggravated assault, simple assault, strangulation, endangering the welfare of a child, reckless endangerment, false imprisonment of a minor, and unlawful restraint of a minor.
Wow.
Currently, he remains in jail. He does have a bond. Ironically enough, he has a bond.
He's got a bond.
But he is still in jail because he has been unable to post that bond according to the
I hope that bond
is
super high.
All right, so let's analyze this. Obviously, this abuse has been ongoing based on the allegations. Multiple siblings testified to this extreme, violent, and criminal conduct of Kraft. Now, the irony for me is this. Currently, he does have a bond, unable to post it. That could change. I'm not sure why he has a bond.
I don't get why he has one.
Rappers, especially those
he should be freaking remanded.
County, no bond, even though there's no evidence connecting them.
He should be in jail, remanded.
Crime, just a lot of rap lyrics. But judges have decided not to pose a bond to allow them to leave. Now, a bond is supposed to be surety for your return. And judges can utilize multiple factors, including a preponderance of the evidence presented, and if you are a flight risk, a danger to others in the judge's opinion. They have a lot of leeway, so to speak. So I'm glad I have attorney at law, Ms. Dahl, on the show. Answer this for me. When a judge decides to still grant a bond, even though they have jurisdiction to say, no, this person is a risk to the community, why do you think in a case like this, with such an extreme charge and, yes, a high preponderance of evidence presented during the bond hearing, why would this guy still even get a bond in the first place?
It is surprising because it is a violent crime. Usually people accused of violent crimes are the ones who are less likely to be able to post a bond. But I think you kind of mentioned it in that question about how sometimes things are handled a little differently. And the thing about the law is there's the law, and then there are a ton of exceptions. And most rules kind of like this are very subjective, and it kind of depends on whatever judge you get. Because there are a multitude of factors, it's not really a bright line. And so for whatever reason, this judge thought he wasn't going to be a threat of harm to the community, wasn't a flight risk, as you mentioned. He could have gotten a judge literally in the next courtroom who would have had a completely different outcome. But the fact that this was against his own daughter, and really, I think that he should be charged with attempted murder if he's not already charged with that. It's pretty extreme. And so I would have thought the prosecution would have had like an excellent argument for why he wouldn't be out on bond. So I am surprised about it. But I think partly it's that there's a lot of discretion. A judge has a lot of discretion over decisions like this.
You know, and it is interesting because you're right. There is no bright line as it relates to bonds typically. But usually judges, they try to make decisions of bond based on possible criminal conduct of the individual. If you have a person who has engaged in such extreme action, and there's a preponderance of evidence from the minors who are involved, would this not start to blur the lines as it relates to a judge's duty to make sure people are safe, especially minors in that local jurisdiction?
I mean, absolutely. And here is the problem. We've been talking about bonds a lot, right? Like as a nation, because there's a push for no bail bonds, because a lot of the time somebody who can't afford a bond is caught up in jail where a wealthy person goes out. So we've had this discussion a lot. And usually the line is if you committed a violent offense, then we want it. But technically the person hasn't been convicted yet, right? So he could very well be innocent, and then he has spent this time in jail. And that's kind of like why there's even a discussion about whether or not to keep somebody in jail until their trial. Probably what helped is this is his first offense, right? That was probably the argument his lawyer made. But again, the fact that he committed attempted murder against his own child, usually that is a circumstance where you would say, this person is a threat and should remain behind bars until their trial.
Yeah, well said. We will continue to follow this story as it develops.
You think for, a high profile case, like a violent nature of that, attempted murder his own flesh and blood, his own daughter, like that. You would think, why would this guy get a bond? That the judge should just remanded him. Because a lot of times, when you get a high profile case like that, like I watched Law and Order, sometimes you hear the prosecuting attorney call for, they say, well, we call for the defendant to be remanded. In this case, the defendant should have been remanded in jail until his trial. Anyways, I'm out here, my job. Peace out.